My mother convinced my boyfriend to marry my sister. She told him, "She's stronger and better for you." I was heartbroken when I found out and moved away to build my life. Years later we reunited at a grand party thrown by me, and when they saw my husband their faces turned pale. Because my husband was. I never thought I'd hear those words from my own mother's lips. "She's stronger and better for you." The sentence hung in the air like a guillotine above my heart as I stood frozen outside the kitchen door during my cousin's graduation party. My boyfriend of 3 years, Mark, had gone to grab us drinks, but his prolonged absence had prompted me to look for him. Now I wished I hadn't. Audrey is sweet, but let's be honest. My Elizabeth has always been the achiever. The one with real potential. My mother's voice was casual, as if discussing nothing more important than a recipe. You deserve someone who'll push you forward in life, not hold you back. I peered through the crack in the door, watching Mark's expression shift from uncomfortable surprise to something more contemplative. He didn't defend me. Didn't laugh it off. Just stood there, clutching our forgotten drinks, listening. "I've always thought you two had more chemistry anyway," my mother continued, patting his arm with maternal affection that twisted my stomach into knots. "Elizabeth has been watching you for years. She's just waiting for her chance." "I don't know, Mrs. Davis." Mark's hesitation felt like betrayal already. "Audrey and I have been together for a long time. And what do you have to show for it?" She raised an eyebrow. "Elizabeth just made junior partner at her law firm. What's Audrey doing with that art degree of hers? Making coffee and sketching portraits nobody buys." The cruel assessment of my struggling art career stung, but it was Mark's thoughtful nod that truly crushed me. I backed away silently, somehow maintaining composure through the remainder of the party while a storm brewed inside me. I should have confronted them immediately. Should have ended things that night. Instead, I smiled and pretended I hadn't heard a word. That was my first mistake. The changes were subtle at first. Mark began mentioning Elizabeth in casual conversation, how impressive her recent case victory was, how her fitness regimen was really showing results. Each comment felt like a small paper cut. Painful but not enough to acknowledge. Then came the cancelled dates. The late nights at work. The sudden interest in legal documentaries that Elizabeth had recommended. Once I found texts between them discussing lunch plans that had never been mentioned to me. When confronted, Mark dismissed it as innocent. They'd bumped into each other downtown. "She's your sister, Audrey. It would be weird if we didn't get along," he explained with annoying reasonableness that made me question my own sanity. Was I being paranoid? Oversensitive? I began to dread family dinners, watching their interactions with wounded eyes while they exchanged private smiles across the table. My best friend Jamie noticed before I would admit it to myself. "Something's different with him," she observed after Mark left another dinner early, claiming work stress. "He doesn't look at you the same way anymore." "We're just going through a rough patch," I insisted, ignoring the painful truth swelling in my chest. "Everyone does." The moment of undeniable truth came 3 months after that kitchen conversation. I had stopped by Mark's apartment unannounced, hoping to surprise him with concert tickets for a band he loved. I still had a key. We'd been talking about moving in together before everything changed. The apartment was quiet when I entered, but a trail of clothing led to the bedroom. My sister's designer blouse lay crumpled on the hallway floor. The bedroom door wasn't fully closed. The sounds coming from within confirmed what I already knew before I pushed it open. Elizabeth's long dark hair spilled across Mark's chest as they lay tangled in his sheets, completely unaware of my presence until I dropped the concert tickets. They scattered across the floor like confetti for a celebration I wasn't invited to. "Audrey." Mark scrambled to cover himself while Elizabeth simply stared, more annoyed than ashamed at the interruption. "This isn't." "Don't." My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "Don't say it isn't what it looks like. I'm not an idiot." Elizabeth sat up slowly, making no attempt to cover herself. "You are going to find out eventually. Maybe this is for the best." Their calm acceptance was more devastating than any hysterical apology could have been. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was the culmination of a deliberate plan. "How long?" I asked, though the answer hardly mattered. 2 months officially, Mark admitted, unable to meet my eyes. "But we've been talking for longer. Since Mom had her little chat with you," I finished for him. Their surprised expressions confirmed I'd known more than they realized. I left without screaming or throwing things, though I wanted to. The rage would come later. That night I simply felt hollow, scrubbed raw from the inside out. When I confronted my mother the next day, her lack of remorse was the final devastation. We stood in her immaculate kitchen, the same room where she'd planted the seeds of my relationship's destruction. "Don't be so dramatic, Audrey. Relationships end all the time," she said, arranging flowers as if we were discussing nothing more significant than the weather. "Elizabeth and Mark make more sense together. You must see that. Why would you do this to me?" My voice cracked. "Your own daughter?" She sighed, finally looking up from her flowers. "Because Elizabeth has always worked harder, aimed higher. She deserves a partner who matches her ambition." He touched my cheek with cool fingers. "You were always the soft one. The dreamer. You'll find someone better suited to your temperament." In that moment I understood that my mother had never seen me clearly, had never valued what made me who I was. In her eyes I would always be the lesser daughter, the disappointment who chose art over law, passion over pragmatism. "You're wrong about me," I whispered. "You always have been." I spent that night packing everything I could fit into my car. My small apartment was mostly furnished with second-hand pieces, nothing I couldn't leave behind. Jamie helped me, offering her couch until I figured out my next move, but I had already decided. I needed more than a new apartment. I needed a new city, a fresh start where every street corner didn't hold memories of Mark or reminders of my sister's betrayal. "Are you sure about this?" Jamie asked as I loaded the last box. "Running away won't fix anything." "I'm not running away," I corrected her, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "I'm moving forward." The next morning I left a short note for my mother, sister, and Mark. It didn't contain forgiveness or dramatic accusations, just 3 words: "Watch me thrive." With my art portfolio, savings that would last 2 months if I was careful, and a determination born from heartbreak, I pointed my car toward Chicago. A city where nobody knew my name or the story of how easily I'd been replaced. Chicago welcomed me with a torrential downpour. How fitting, I thought, as my windshield wipers struggled against the deluge. My GPS directed me to a motel on the city's outskirts, the only accommodation my dwindling funds could sustain while I searched for something permanent. The motel room smelled faintly of cigarettes and cheap air freshener. I sat on the edge of the bed, surrounded by my hastily packed belongings, and allowed myself 5 minutes to cry. Just 5 minutes of weakness before the real work began. When my alarm chimed, I wiped my face, opened my laptop, and began hunting for apartments and jobs with equal desperation. 3 days and 12 apartment viewings later, I signed a lease for a studio in Uptown. "A neighborhood with character," my realtor had said optimistically. What she meant was that the building was old, the elevator frequently out of service, and my neighbors a colorful assortment of students, immigrants, and night shift workers. The rent consumed nearly 2/3 of what remained in my savings, starting the invisible countdown clock on my Chicago experiment. "You have 30 days, I told my reflection as I pinned job listings to my refrigerator with magnets shaped like tiny pizza slices, the only decorative touch in my sparse new home. Find work or admit defeat." 28 days later, after a string of rejections and unanswered applications, I walked into Meridian Investment Group for my final scheduled interview. The receptionist directed me to a seating area where another candidate sat reviewing notes, her designer suit making my carefully pressed department store dress feel suddenly inadequate. "Miss Davis." A woman with a sleek bob and frameless glasses appeared. "I'm Carol from HR. I'm afraid there's been a change." My heart sank as she continued. "The administrative position has been filled internally, but Mr. Harrington wondered if you'd be interested in interviewing for a different role, executive assistant to one of our junior associates." I followed her through a maze of cubicles and glass-walled offices, finally arriving at a corner workspace where a man sat surrounded by stacks of reports and takeout containers. He looked up, revealing tired eyes and a day-old stubble that somehow enhanced rather than detracted from his professional appearance. "Patrick Reynolds." He introduced himself, standing to shake my hand. "Sorry about the mess. Annual reports are due and my last assistant quit without notice." "Audrey Davis," I replied, surprised by his firm handshake and direct gaze. "I'm flexible about job descriptions as long as they come with a paycheck." A smile flickered across his face. "Honest." I appreciate that. He gestured to the chair across from him. Tell me why an art major from. He glanced at my resume. From Philadelphia, wants to work at a Chicago investment firm. I could have crafted a diplomatic answer about career changes and financial security. Instead, I heard myself say, because starting over sometimes requires burning the map of your old life and drawing a new one. For a moment, I thought I'd blown it with my melodramatic response. Then Patrick nodded slowly. I know something about fresh starts myself. He pushed aside a stack of folders. The job pays less than the administrative role you applied for, but has more potential for advancement. The hours are brutal, the learning curve steep, and I'm told I can be demanding. I'm not afraid of hard work or demanding people, I assured him, thinking of my mother's perpetual disapproval. And I'm a quick learner. He hired me on the spot and I started the next morning. The first weeks tested every limit I had. Patrick worked 16-hour days preparing client portfolios and investment strategies, expecting me to keep pace. I brought him coffee that went cold while he analyzed market trends, ordered lunches he forgot to eat, and organized chaos into manageable systems while absorbing investment terminology through osmosis. Why are you still here? He asked one night at 11, looking up to find me reorganizing his client files by risk profile rather than alphabetically. Because the work isn't finished, I answered simply. Our early interactions were strictly professional but underscored by awkward moments. Like when he accidentally sent me a text meant for his brother complaining about a bad date, or when I spilled coffee across important documents and nearly cried from stress and embarrassment. It's just paper, he said, helping me blot the mess. The data's backed up. Breathe, Audrey. Lunch breaks became our unintentional bonding time. Patrick insisted I leave the office, dragging me to food trucks or hole-in-the-wall restaurants where we'd discuss everything except work, from his passion for classic motorcycles to my abandoned art. I kept my past vague, but he never pressed for details I wasn't ready to share. You're a mystery, Davis, he commented once over Vietnamese sandwiches. Most people love talking about themselves. Most people have stories worth sharing, I deflected. As months passed, our professional rhythm improved while our personal rapport deepened. Patrick began seeking my input on client presentations. I started anticipating his needs before he voiced them. Late nights evolved from stressed silence to companionable collaboration, occasionally punctuated by surprisingly personal conversations. My father wanted me to take over his construction business, Patrick confided during a particularly late evening. He considers finance playing with other people's money. We haven't spoken in 2 years. My mother always preferred my sister, I offered in return my first mention of family. Nothing I did was ever quite good enough. He didn't offer platitudes or judgments, just understanding silence that felt more healing than any words could have been. 6 months into my Chicago reinvention, Patrick asked me to join him for dinner at an actual restaurant instead of eating takeout at our desks. I assumed it was to celebrate landing a major client. Instead, over dessert, he pushed a business plan across the table. I've been developing this for 3 years, he explained as I skimmed the document. A boutique investment firm focused on sustainable businesses and first-generation entrepreneurs. Clients who are overlooked by traditional firms. I looked up confused. It's impressive, but why show me? Because I'm leaving Meridian next month to launch it. He leaned forward, eyes intense. And I want you to come with me. Not as my assistant but as operations manager. You understand systems, people, and how to make things work in ways I never could. That's insane, I managed, pulse quickening. I barely understand the investment world. You understand more than you think, he countered. And you have something more valuable, integrity and intuition. The technical stuff can be learned. It would be risky, I said cautiously, though something inside me had already begun to say yes. Extremely, he agreed with unexpected candor. We might fail spectacularly, but I'd rather fail building something meaningful than succeed making wealthy people marginally wealthier. I studied his face, searching for signs of the impulsiveness or hollow ambition I'd seen in others. Instead, I found steady determination and genuine belief in his vision and, surprisingly, in me. When do we start? I heard myself ask, feeling for the first time since leaving Philadelphia that I was moving toward something, not just away. Our transition from colleagues to business partners happened seamlessly, but the shift from friends to something more took us both by surprise. It began with late nights reviewing business plans that evolved into conversations about hopes and dreams, then dinners that lasted well past discussing work. 6 months into our new venture, Patrick kissed me for the first time outside our office building as snow fell softly around us. Neither of us said anything about it the next day, both afraid to complicate our precarious business relationship. But when it happened again a week later, we could no longer pretend it was an impulse. "This could ruin everything we're building," I warned him one evening. "Or it could be the foundation for something even better," he countered, always the optimist to my cautious realist. Our courtship was unconventional, business meetings that turned into dates, market research trips that became weekend getaways. We kept it private from clients and investors, determined to be taken seriously in a field where women were often viewed as accessories rather than equals. But within a year, Patrick proposed during a mundane moment, both of us in sweatpants, reviewing quarterly projections on my living room floor. "Marry me," he said suddenly, looking up from a spreadsheet. "Be my partner in everything." No ring, no rehearsed speech, just genuine certainty that caught me off guard. "People will say it's too soon," I hesitated, though my heart had already answered. "Let them talk. I've never been more sure of anything." We married 3 months later at the courthouse with only Jamie, who'd flown in from Philadelphia, and Patrick's brother Michael as witnesses. I wore a simple cream dress, Patrick a charcoal suit. No elaborate vows, just straightforward promises spoken with unmistakable conviction. "I choose you as my partner in all things," Patrick said, holding my hands tightly. "I promise that our partnership will always come first, before work, before success, before everything." The words healed something in me that had been broken by betrayal. This wasn't a man looking for someone stronger or better. He saw me exactly as I was and chose me deliberately. Our reception was dinner at our favorite Vietnamese restaurant, the one where we'd shared so many lunches. The owner, Mrs. Nguyen, insisted on decorating our table with flowers and serving champagne she'd hidden for special occasions. "To partnerships that lift us higher," Patrick toasted. Reality quickly replaced romance as we faced the challenges of a startup business. Our fledgling company, Reynolds Capital Partners, operated out of our one-bedroom apartment to save on overhead costs. The dining table became our conference room, the living room transformed into a makeshift office with filing cabinets disguised as end tables. We scheduled client meetings at cafes or hotel lobbies, carefully crafting the illusion of established success we hadn't yet achieved. I took a part-time position at an art gallery to supplement our income while Patrick pursued potential clients. Our savings dwindled as months passed without the breakthrough we needed. Some nights I'd find Patrick still awake at 3 a.m., recalculating projections or revising proposals. "We should consider taking on more traditional clients," I suggested delicately after our 6th month of barely covering expenses. "Just until we're established. If we compromise now, we'll never get back to our original vision," he argued, the stubborn determination in his voice both admirable and frightening. Our first real argument as a married couple erupted over finances. Patrick wanted to invest our emergency fund into expanding the business. I insisted we needed security. The fight ended with slammed doors and hurt feelings, but also a compromise, half for growth, half for security. It became our pattern, his ambition balanced by my pragmatism, creating equilibrium neither of us could achieve alone. 8 months into our marriage, opportunity finally knocked. A small sustainable energy company needed investors who understood their mission beyond profit margins. Patrick spent weeks developing a presentation that explained not just returns on investment but environmental impact and community benefits. I stayed up all night designing informational packets that showcased both professionalism and personality. The client chose us over established firms, bringing 3 other eco-conscious businesses with them. Finally, we had momentum. "We need to celebrate," Patrick insisted, though I was hesitant to spend money. He surprised me by recreating our first date. Takeout containers from that same Vietnamese restaurant, spreadsheets pushed aside to make room for spring rolls and noodles on our dining table. To our first major deal, he toasted with grocery store wine in coffee mugs. And to my brilliant wife who never stopped believing even when I almost did. The business grew steadily after that first breakthrough. Our apartment became increasingly cramped with file boxes and office equipment. Interns worked from our sofa. Conference calls happened in our bedroom with the door closed. The arrangement became unsustainable the day a potential investor arrived early for a meeting while I was stepping out of the shower. We need real office space, Patrick conceded that evening. And possibly a home where I don't find paper clips in the cereal box. With cautious optimism, we signed a lease on a small office space downtown and moved to a slightly larger apartment. One with a spare bedroom that wouldn't double as storage for business documents. The separation between work and home brought welcome balance to our relationship. 3 years of relentless work followed. Patrick developed a reputation for integrity and innovation in sustainable investment. Our client list expanded beyond Chicago to neighboring states. I built systems and teams that turned Patrick's vision into operational reality. We complemented each other perfectly. His charisma and strategic thinking matched with my attention to detail and organizational skills. Our biggest milestone came unexpectedly. A major investment group approached Patrick about acquiring Reynolds Capital Partners. Their offer was generous, but included a condition. Patrick would need to stay on as CEO of the newly expanded Sustainable Investment Division, with complete decision-making authority over ethical investments. I never imagined running something this size, he admitted the night after signing the contracts. We stood in the kitchen of our new house. A modest but beautiful 3-bedroom in a neighborhood we'd only dreamed about when we started. They didn't buy just the company, I reminded him, straightening his tie. They bought your vision. Your integrity. The transition wasn't easy. Patrick worked longer hours establishing the new division while I adjusted to my role as Chief Operations Officer. But watching him in action, commanding boardrooms with the same passion he'd once displayed in our tiny apartment, filled me with pride that eclipsed the sacrifices. We did it, he whispered during the champagne toast at the official announcement of his appointment as CEO. Together. And as I watched him shake hands with executives who now reported to him, I thought about how far we'd come from that rain-soaked day I'd arrived in Chicago, heartbroken and alone. Life had taken everything from me only to replace it with something I never could have imagined. 5 years into Patrick's role as CEO, I had firmly established myself as more than just the boss's wife. My operational systems had become the backbone of the company's expansion into 3 new markets, and executives regularly sought my input on organizational decisions. We had found our rhythm. Patrick the visionary, me the architect who built the structures to support his dreams. Our personal life had settled into comfortable routines as well. Sunday mornings spent reading the paper over coffee, monthly dinner parties with our small circle of friends, and occasional weekend trips to Michigan where Patrick was restoring a vintage motorcycle. We hadn't started a family yet, both focused on nurturing our growing company, but the topic had begun to surface in late-night conversations. I rarely thought about Philadelphia anymore. Jamie visited occasionally, bringing carefully filtered updates about mutual friends, but never mentioning my family. I'd made peace with that chapter of my life being firmly closed. Or so I believed until a particular Tuesday morning. You might want to see this, Patrick said, sliding a financial magazine across the breakfast table. The small headline in the corner read, Davis and Associates faces bankruptcy after failed expansion. My sister's law firm, the one she'd built with my ex-boyfriend after he left his previous position to join her practice. I didn't know you still followed news from Philadelphia, I said, trying to sound casual while my heart raced. I don't. But Meridian Investment Group is on our acquisition shortlist, and your ex works there now. Their legal department outsources to Davis and Associates. Patrick watched me carefully. I wanted you to hear it from me before the office started buzzing about it. The magazine article detailed Elizabeth's failed attempt to expand her firm nationally, resulting in mounting debt and client exodus. Mark had apparently joined Meridian's compliance team after their joint venture collapsed, taking a significant pay cut. The irony wasn't lost on me. The stronger match my mother had engineered now struggling while I sat in my beautiful kitchen beside a successful husband. Does it change your acquisition plans? I asked pragmatically. That depends on you, Patrick replied. Meridian's sustainable energy portfolio aligns perfectly with our growth strategy, but I'll walk away if it makes you uncomfortable. His willingness to sacrifice a smart business move for my emotional comfort exemplified why I'd fallen in love with him. Don't be ridiculous, I said, squeezing his hand. It's just business. 2 weeks later, the acquisition was finalized. Meridian would maintain its brand identity while operating under our corporate umbrella, with Mark remaining in his compliance role, technically now our employee, though several management layers would separate us. We should host a gala, Patrick suggested one evening as we reviewed the quarterly results. Celebrate the acquisition, showcase our expanded sustainable portfolio to investors, and introduce the Meridian team to our corporate culture. The suggestion wasn't unusual. We hosted similar events annually, typically at Chicago's Natural History Museum, where the sustainability theme resonated with our company values. What caught me off guard was Patrick's next comment. I think we should invite Mark Davis and the key players from Philadelphia, including any affiliated legal representatives. Show them our corporate values extend beyond Chicago. My teacup froze halfway to my lips. You want to invite my sister and ex-boyfriend to our corporate gala? Patrick set down his papers. Is that what this is about? I had no idea. The Davis in the legal documents. I never connected it to your sister. His genuine surprise made me realize I'd never shared my full family history with him. Only vague references to a difficult mother and a favored sister. Patrick knew I'd left Philadelphia after a betrayal but didn't know the specifics. I'd compartmentalized so effectively that I'd forgotten he couldn't see the connections I found glaringly obvious. That night, I finally told him everything. My mother's manipulation, Mark's betrayal, Elizabeth's callousness. I expected sympathy, perhaps protective anger on my behalf. What I didn't expect was Patrick's thoughtful silence followed by an unexpected perspective. Maybe it's time they saw who you've become, he said finally. Not for revenge but for closure. You've built an extraordinary life, Audrey. A life that's authentic to who you are, not what anyone else wanted you to be. His words unlocked something inside me, a desire not for retribution but for recognition. Not to hurt them as they'd hurt me, but to stand confidently before them as the woman I'd become despite their dismissal of my worth. We'll invite them, I decided. All of them, Mark, Elizabeth, even my mother. The next weeks were a blur of gala preparations alongside a growing knot of anxiety in my stomach. I channeled my nervous energy into ensuring every detail was perfect, from the sustainable seafood menu to the carbon-neutral transportation for guests. Our event coordinator commented that I'd never been so involved in planning before. As I reviewed the finalized guest list, seeing their names in black and white brought a wave of emotions I thought I'd processed years ago. What would they think seeing me now? Would my mother still view me as the lesser daughter? Would Mark regret his choice? The questions circled like vultures despite my attempts to dismiss them. Having second thoughts? Patrick asked, finding me staring at the invitation mock-ups late one night. Not about inviting them, I clarified. Just wondering if I'm doing this for the right reasons. Am I still seeking their approval after all these years? Patrick sat beside me, taking my hands in his. Only you can answer that. But from where I stand, you stopped needing anyone's approval the day you drove into Chicago with nothing but determination and talent. He kissed my forehead. Whatever your reasons, I'll be right beside you. His steady confidence bolstered mine. The next morning, I approved the final invitation list without hesitation. The RSVPs arrived gradually: business associates, investors, Meridian employees. Then came the response from Philadelphia. Mark would attend as Meridian's compliance officer. Elizabeth would accompany him as his wife. And most surprisingly, my mother accepted with a brief note indicating she was looking forward to reconnecting after all these years. The formal invitations were mailed 3 weeks before the event, elegant cards featuring recycled paper and soy-based ink that reflected our company's values. For my family's invitations, I included a personal note. Looking forward to showing you the life I've built. Audrey Reynolds. As the gala approached, my wardrobe became an unexpected source of anxiety. The perfect dress became symbolic. It needed to project confidence without obvious attempt to impress. After countless shopping trips, I found it, a sophisticated emerald gown that complemented my eyes and projected elegant authority. Ready to face your past? Patrick asked the night before the gala, finding me rehearsing imaginary conversations in front of our bedroom mirror. Ready to showcase my present, I corrected, suddenly certain of my purpose. This wasn't about proving my worth to people who had underestimated me. It was about honoring the journey that had led me to a life more fulfilling than anything I could have imagined when I fled Philadelphia. The Natural History Museum transformed beautifully for our gala, with sustainable lighting casting a warm glow across the grand hall. Patrick and I arrived early to review final arrangements, the organic floral centerpieces, the locally sourced menu, the jazz quartet playing softly in the corner. Everything perfect, everything a reflection of the values that had built our success. Nervous? Patrick asked, adjusting his bow tie as we watched staff add finishing touches. Oddly, no, I realized with surprise. The anxiety that had plagued me for weeks had dissolved, replaced by a calm certainty. This is our world. They're just visiting it. As guests began arriving, Patrick and I stationed ourselves near the entrance, greeting investors and colleagues with practiced ease. I wore my emerald gown with a simple diamond pendant Patrick had given me on our 5th anniversary. My hair, once long like Elizabeth's, now fell in a sophisticated bob that framed my face. I felt powerful, authentic, completely myself. I spotted them immediately, my mother entering first in a navy dress that screamed Old Money Philadelphia, followed by Elizabeth and Mark. They paused just inside the doorway, taking in the elegant surroundings and clearly searching for familiar faces in a sea of strangers. For a moment I considered approaching them, but something held me back. Let them find me, I decided. Let them see me in my element first. Their circuit around the room eventually brought them to where Patrick and I stood chatting with the mayor about green energy initiatives. My mother noticed me first, her practiced social smile freezing momentarily before recovering. Elizabeth's eyes widened in genuine shock. Mark simply stared, looking between Patrick and me with dawning recognition. Audrey, my mother recovered first, embracing me with theatrical affection. You look absolutely stunning. Mother, I responded evenly, accepting her air kiss. I'm glad you could make it. I turned to include Patrick. This is my husband, Patrick Reynolds. CO Patrick Reynolds, Elizabeth clarified, extending her hand. Always researching, always calculating advantages. Some things never changed. Your reputation precedes you. I've followed your company's expansion with interest. All due respect, Mrs. Davis, but our success has been a partnership from day one, Patrick replied smoothly, his hand finding the small of my back. Audrey's operational genius made my vision possible. The surprise in their eyes was subtle but unmistakable. This wasn't the narrative they had expected. The heartbroken girl finding a successful man to rescue her. This was a partnership of equals. Mark Davis, IX introduced himself stiffly. Compliance officer at Meridian. Yes, we're familiar with your position, Patrick nodded professionally. Welcome to the family of companies. Mark's expression shifted as understanding dawned. You're Meridian's new parent company. Indeed, I confirmed, savoring the moment without malice. The acquisition was finalized last month. Patrick will be making the official announcement during his speech. Their discomfort was palpable as they processed this new reality. The man who had discarded me for someone stronger, now answering to the company I had helped build. The sister who had taken what was mine now standing before me not as the superior sibling but as the wife of a mid-level employee. If you'll excuse us, Patrick said graciously, we should continue greeting our guests. Please enjoy yourselves. As we moved away, I caught my mother watching me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Something between calculation and genuine bewilderment. The evening progressed with choreographed precision. Dinner was served, awards presented to key team members including several I had personally mentored. Throughout it all, I felt their eyes following me, watching as executives sought my opinion, as Patrick referenced my contributions in conversations, as I navigated the room with the confidence of someone exactly where she belonged. Patrick's welcome speech came after dinner. He spoke eloquently about sustainable investment, about building businesses that valued more than just profit margins. Then came the announcement about Meridian's acquisition, with Mark uncomfortably spotlighted as Patrick welcomed him and his colleagues into our corporate structure. The power dynamic couldn't have been clearer if we'd designed it intentionally. My mother found me at the dessert table afterward, champagne glass in hand. I always knew you would do well for yourself, she stated as though rewriting history. You had such potential. Did you? I asked mildly. I recall different assessments. She waved dismissively. A mother pushes her children to achieve their best. Elizabeth needed confidence. You needed motivation. What I needed was support, I corrected gently. What I found was strength on my own terms. Well, she sipped her champagne, I suppose I should thank this Patrick for seeing what I missed. Patrick saw me clearly, I agreed. But he didn't create my success, Mother. We built it together because we value each other as equals. That's the difference. Her practiced smile faltered. Elizabeth and Mark are having difficulties, she confided, changing tactics. Perhaps you could put in a good word? Family should help family. There it was, the real purpose behind her pleasant facade. Not reconciliation but advantage. Some things truly never changed. Their performance will determine their future with the company, I replied evenly. Just as mine did. I spotted Elizabeth approaching determinately, Mark trailing behind her. Your husband is impressive, my sister acknowledged reluctantly. The way he commands the room. You've done well for yourself. The backhanded compliment hung in the air. The implication that my success was merely a reflection of my husband's, not a partnership we'd built together. We've done well together, I corrected. That's how true partnerships work. Something worth considering in your own arrangements. Elizabeth's expression hardened at the gentle rebuke. Mark looked away uncomfortably, unable to meet my eyes. The dynamic between them seemed strained, brittle in a way that triggered not satisfaction but an unexpected pang of compassion. They had what they thought they wanted, only to discover it wasn't the prize they'd imagined. I should circulate, I excused myself. Enjoy the remainder of the evening. Hours later, after the last guests departed and we returned home exhausted but satisfied, Patrick and I sat in our kitchen sharing leftover dessert straight from the container. How do you feel? He asked, studying my face in the soft kitchen light. Lighter, I realized. Like I've set down something heavy I didn't know I was still carrying. He nodded thoughtfully. They seem smaller somehow. Not at all how I imagined from your stories. They are smaller, I mused. Or maybe I'm bigger. Not in status or success, but in understanding what actually matters. Which is? Patrick prompted. Building something real. Something true to yourself. I reached for his hand across the counter. With someone who sees your value without needing to diminish others. So not revenge after all? His eyes crinkled with understanding. The strangest thing happened, I confessed. Standing there watching them, seeing how unhappy they are despite getting exactly what they schemed for. I didn't feel triumph. I felt grateful. Grateful. If they hadn't betrayed me, I might never have left. Never found Chicago, never met you, never discovered what I'm capable of building. I squeezed his hand. Their cruelty gave me my freedom, though they never intended to. Patrick smiled, pulling me into an embrace. That might be the most powerful form of redemption. Not making others pay for hurting you, but recognizing that their actions launched you toward something infinitely better. As we climbed the stairs to bed, exhausted but content, I realized the night had given me something I hadn't known I needed. Not the satisfaction of showing them what they'd lost, but the peace of finally, completely letting them go.